Welcome back to this explainer of the 38th entry in the Chronicles of the Gnoll's Bane. Today, we're unpacking a truly harrowing historical account of high fantasy disaster, brutal warfare, and just raw survival. This is a story that pushes its heroes to the absolute brink, testing not only their combat prowess, but their sheer will to live when the very earth beneath them rebels.
Oh, right. Let's just jump right in, because our primary source material drops us immediately into a spiraling dwarven city that is literally being ripped apart by a violent earthquake. I mean, imagine the sheer terror of ascending a massive subterranean metropolis while the stone pathways fracture under your boots and the ceiling caves in above you. The Gonfrel's Bane and the dwarven workers of Hammerdeep are trapped in a desperate climb. They aren't fighting an army right now, they are fighting the mountain itself. At one point, a massive boulder nearly crushes a rail cart full of wounded workers, shattering a wheel and leaving them completely vulnerable to the crumbling abyss just inches away.
So, how exactly does a cohesive team survive a compounding crisis like that? Well, we first have to look at the diverse anatomy of our heroes. You've got veteran adventurers like Cedric the Human Druid, Talinor the Elven Ranger, Thane the Air Genasi Bard, and Calypso the Elven Wizard. Add to that the intense martial discipline of our samurai Okazaki the Azimar and Roberto the Human. Plus, the newest additions caught in the fray, Ord, a mysterious adolescent lizardfolk rogue, and Sunny, a half-elf ranger they found deep within the caves. In a catastrophic event like this, a standard infantry unit would almost certainly fail. But this group, their highly specialized mastery of martial arts, primal shapeshifting, and the arcane, is quite literally the only thing standing between them and total annihilation.
To see that synergy in action, just look at these split-second tactical decisions. Picture this happening in real time. First, Roberto uses sheer human strength to physically brace the broken cart as the tremors hit. Second, Okazaki manages to spot a missing wheel pin in the rubble so the dwarves can fix the cart, just as a massive 10-foot fissure tears the pathway wide open. Third, Thane instantly transforms into a massive elephant, uses his trunk to hurl Calypso and Sunny safely across the crumbling gap, and then levitates himself over. And finally, Cedric transforms into a hulking moorbounder, a terrifyingly powerful beast, and leaps the fractured stone while physically carrying the rest of the party. It is an absolute masterclass in party synergy under unimaginable pressure.
Now, despite the flawless execution from the rest of the group, there was one terrifying misstep. Samurai Okazaki faltered. The floor gave way right as he leapt, sending him plunging into the pitch-black abyss below. But what's really amazing about this moment is the sheer dramatic turn. Rather than falling to his doom, Okazaki taps into his heritage. Radiant, angelic wings literally burst from his back in the darkness, halting his fall and letting him soar right back up to the crumbling ledge. Talk about a close call.
So the real climax of this structural collapse centered around the city's great elevator platform, which led to the upper reaches of Hammerdeep. This massive stone lift was suspended by 8 colossal chains. As the party pushes forward, the earthquakes violently resume, and those 8 chains suddenly start snapping, one by one. You can practically feel the tension here. 3 chains on one side give way entirely, the platform violently tilts, and dwarves and vital supplies start sliding toward an endless drop. Now, this specific sequence is absolutely crucial because it highlights how Cedric Featherstep seamlessly blends the brute force of his beast form with elemental magic to prevent a mass dwarven casualty event. First, while still in that massive moorbounder form, he charges a collapsed structure using raw primal strength to shove aside boulders and free trapped civilians. But then, when that elevator tilts and 2 workers lose their grip, Cedric instantly shifts tactics. He unleashes a powerful gust of wind magic that physically slows their slide, giving them just enough time to drag themselves to safety before the elevator finally escapes. It shows incredible versatility and heroism. Okay, so the physical earthquakes finally stop, right? You'd think they get a breather. No way. The party is suddenly struck by this shared, agonizing psychic attack that plunges them into a shifting, terrifying vision of the Crystal Kingdom. At first, it's this beautiful dream, joyous celebrations, archery contests, cheering citizens, and King Randor waiting to award them ceremonial medallions. But in a flash, explosions rip through the city, and the dream warps into a horrific nightmare. The palace is reduced to flaming ruins, smoke chokes the air, and the cheers are replaced by the screams of the dying. And weirdly, the rest of the adventuring party is completely missing from the vision entirely. This psychological horror trip all comes to a head with a single, motionless robed figure standing in the devastated courtyard. As the remaining dreamers approach it for answers, it turns and lashes out. Two piercing red eyes shift and merge into one horrific single eye glaring out from beneath its hood, twisted into an unnaturally wide, crooked smile. Then it unleashes a shriek so devastating that it literally shocks the entire party out of their shared vision and completely back into reality. And what they wake up to is a harsh reality. It's 2 full days later. They're bruised, exhausted, and laying in the infirmary halls of Hammerdeep. The dwarven healers inform them they'd been totally unconscious since the earthquake and the psychic attack. That 2-day gap is incredibly significant, right? It means for 48 hours, the world has been moving, plotting, and shifting, while our heroes were entirely incapacitated, leaving them super disoriented and desperately needing to get their bearings.
But, of course, there is literally no time to process this trauma. They try to find Captain Rurik to confirm their diplomatic agreements, but before the captain can even answer, alarm gongs start thundering through the stone halls. A cry echoes from the upper battlements. To the gates. A massive horde of goblins and orcs is surging right toward the kingdom's entrance. So much for resting in the infirmary. Full-scale siege warfare has officially arrived at Hammerdeep.
Let's move up to those battlements and see how this builds into an ingenious piece of improvised military tactics. The enemy is swarming the main bridge in overwhelming numbers, hammering war cries against their shields. The Gauls' Bane need to act fast. So Talonor the Ranger empties their last 5 barrels of black powder directly onto the bridge. Next, he immediately falls back and calls for Calypso, the elven wizard. She steps up and unleashes a devastating arcane fireball directly into the mundane explosives. Boom! A catastrophic detonation completely obliterates the bridge, sending the invaders screaming into the abyss. It is a perfect, devastating combo of medieval siegecraft and high fantasy magic.
But as you might guess, that tactical victory was incredibly short-lived. Why? Because the massive explosion awoke something far, far worse from deep within the cavern darkness. Orange plumes of light begin to glow, move, and roar. 3 chimeras emerge from the shadows. If you're not familiar, these are creatures of absolute nightmare. They have the muscular front body of a lion, the hind legs of a goat, leathery dragon wings, and 3 distinct terrifying heads: a lion, a ram, and a dragon. These aren't just mere beasts, they are legendary monsters of the deep, and the explosion drew them straight into the fray. The ensuing chaos reads straight out of a legendary epic. These beasts have absolutely no allegiance. They descend on the surviving goblin and orc horde, bathing them in merciless dragon fire and tearing through their ranks. But one of the monsters bypasses the horde entirely and soars directly toward the dwarven gates, breathing fire right at our heroes. The party immediately retaliates. In a stunning display of accuracy, Sunny whips a slingstone perfectly into the eye of the beast's dragon head, blinding it on one side. Taking advantage of this critical blind spot, Talonor makes what is arguably the boldest, most reckless tactical choice of the entire chronicle. As the massive beast thunders past, the Elven Ranger leaps from the battlements mid-air directly onto the flying monster's back. Which leaves us with one final, incredibly provocative thought, as the 38th entry abruptly ends. Talonor is now engaged in a mid-air duel riding the back of a 3-headed, fire-breathing monstrosity high above a bottomless chasm. Without the element of surprise, and with their bridge completely destroyed, how on earth will a grounded party save their ranger from certain death? The mountain has broken, the horde has fallen, but the true terror of the deep has taken flight. To find out what happens, you'll definitely want to dive deeper into the Chronicles. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and we will see you next time.